The best of money matters. Wealth Tracker.
Welcome to the Wealth Tracker, where we dive deep into the uncharted territories of niche investment strategies that promise to redefine wealth. I'm Nadiah Koh. MDRT's latest survey reveals a significant gap between financial awareness and action among Singaporeans, with many expressing confidence in their financial literacy but still exhibiting concerning risk behaviors. And while the survey highlights high familiarity with financial tools like CPF schemes and stocks, it also points to a worrying trend. Younger generations, particularly Gen Z and millennials, are increasingly drawn to high-risk investments such as cryptocurrencies, alternative assets, and even pet insurance. At the same time, the survey underscores a persistent protection gap, with many Singaporeans failing to prioritize essential coverage, despite a strong awareness of available insurance products. So to explore more about these findings, joining us today is Jake Lim, a senior financial advisor. Is Jake Lim, an 8-year MDRT member. Hi Jake, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nadiah. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. So, Jake, the latest MDRT survey draws a clear line between awareness and action. And while most Singaporeans say they're familiar with financial tools, uptake remains inconsistent. Only half consider their financial literacy good or excellent, and yet nearly a quarter say they would take up a 10% interest loan just to invest in the stock market. What does this suggest about how financial literacy is being understood today? Is it a case of people overestimating their understanding, or are we seeing a disconnect between knowledge and risk assessment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely very concerning, when you have a quarter, of the people willing to take up loans, for their investments. But then before we dive into that, I think as you can see from the survey, from the MDRT, it shows that, one, out of two people only deems their financial literacy standards as good or excellent. But I also say that, majority of the people in Singapore are just very modest. They won't go around telling that, I'm very, very good in my financial, literacy. But I think most important thing when we look into figures like this, it also shows that there are people who are still not very clear, what they should know and what they don't know about financial planning and personal finance. So this is also important because it's not just about, what they should invest in, about what they know. Actually, it's also about what they have, on the government level, about their CPF, also what they have with their employer. So I think this is the area I think we all should really work hard on it to understand what we have first before we throw money on other things we do not know of. So as I was saying, the next part about the people willing to take up loans, or investments, I think there is more towards the Gen Z actually from the survey that we're looking at. I think nowadays, gone the times like our parents, they only get information, from the newspaper, and it's quite a controlled, kind of environment. Yeah. But nowadays, a youngster, they have Reddit, they have, like social media, they have a lot of information they can tap on, understanding, not just about stocks, not about bonds, about crypto, right? There are a lot of informations online and a lot of misinformations too,
Right, Jay. You were mentioning something about the younger generation. The data also shows that younger Singaporeans, particularly Gen Zs and millennials, are far more comfortable with this kind of leveraged investing compared to Gen X and baby boomers. Is this purely a reflection of generational risk appetite? And how do investment mindsets differ across these groups, and what influences their decision making today?
I think the fact that, for Gen X and even millennials, I think we're not getting any younger anymore. So the fact that, I think life stages is also a very important consideration, you see, because as for most of the millennials, even of the Gen X people, there is a lot of commitments, families, housing, all the things they have to be worried about. So I think it's natural that their risk appetite is not as big as, youngsters that just came out from schools, taking on the world. Yeah, but I think whereas everything else, sustainability is still the key to everything. I think the fact that, for youngsters, when they dive deep into financial, tools like cryptos and high speculative items, I think the most important thing is that is it sustainable, because something of speculative nature is also very dangerous. And when you decided to even borrow money to as high as 10%, it's actually very concerning, because in the moment, if your whole capital's been wiped out, You'll be spending your whole life repaying this debt. So there is a lot of education awarenesses that needs to brought on the national level, on investment risk, to youngsters. That's my point of view.
I see. So with the younger generation, there's a noticeable shift into higher risk assets, cryptocurrencies, like you've mentioned, alternative investments like wine or art, and even pet insurance is seeing more traction with millennials and Gen Zs. But what are some of the common risks or misconceptions people tend to overlook when entering these alternative asset classes, and how can they better protect themselves from making costly investment mistakes in these areas?
Okay, for wine, I believe that they have a very strong passion when they go into alternate like investments like this. As I said earlier on, I think that it's very important when we touch into alternate kind of investments. We need to be very clear, right? What is the risk involved in it, and are we willingly and have the resources to lose or not? So, of course, when the risk the risk of losing the money is very low, I think it's fine. But I mean that, of course, first thing first, everyone's financial situation is very different. It really depends on, what are the circumstances you're currently at now. Of course, priority is important. If your priority, is to be answerable to your other half on weddings, on your housing. So I think it is reasonable to be cautious. Right. My concern is really not on the investments itself, but I think the most important thing that we really need to focus on is our current life stages, on, what are the things that we need to spend, what are the priorities that we need to make. Yeah, these are more important things to go through first on the thought process before we dive deep into things that is extremely speculative.
Right. The protection gap is also another area of concern because while awareness of insurance products is high, actual uptake is lower than expected, especially for basic health, life, and disability coverage. Why do you think protection continues to take a backseat even when people know it's important? Is it because of affordability, competing financial priorities, or simply the lack of urgency?
I think it's, again, everyone's circumstances is different. I think of what you mentioned just now, Nadia. I think it's a bit of everything. A lot of times, things are not just black and white. So, like I said, it really depends on your circumstances where you see everybody at their different stages of life, have their unique challenges. Especially, people who just graduated, young graduates. Their major focus are definitely housing and wedding, right? And of course, when people have families, it's their children. So we all have things that we need to prioritize, that we need to focus on. So that's why people at their life stages are really too occupied, by their necessities, their commitments, right? So that's why sometimes insurance would take a backseat.
I see.
So that's why I think, of course, at the same time, it is good to relook into your personal portfolio or to seek financial advice, right, from professionals, to go through about life stages and look at the blind spot, actually. Because the scary thing is not that you don't have a first aid box in a home, but you assume, you have a first aid box in the home, and when you open it up, the box, everything is empty there. so yeah, right. So I would rather you don't have that first aid box, but then, having an empty first aid box is very dangerous. So as I was saying, it's always good to have someone professional to look through about life stages and give a good guidance, what is missing, right, and to make meaningful decisions from there.
Right. Speaking of professionals, the MDRT survey also highlights that Singaporeans who work with financial advisors tend to have broader insurance coverage and a more diversified portfolio. Could you help elaborate on the types of portfolios these individuals typically hold? And have you observed any specific trends in the terms of asset allocation or investment strategies they exhibit?
I think as most of the advisor, definitely what we look through is your risk management in view that in the events when you have permanently lost your income, you could temporarily lose your income, so that's why we need to have proper savings, and of course liquidity to tide us through. But in the events of permanent loss of income, like illnesses, disability, or death, I think this is one thing most of the financial advisor professions, will inform, our clients and the people that it is of importance to prepare that piece, right? Because like I say, if you have retrenched or so, as long as you have your living breath, you can always find a new job. Yeah, but in the event of permanent loss of income, I think, which I'm also very glad that most of the people have taken advisors' advice, and build up on their risk management component in the event of permanent loss of income.
I see. Jake, before we let you go, is there anything else in the survey that particularly stood out to you, either as a concerning trend or a positive shift?
I think the positive, I will talk about the 2 points, the concerning trend and the positive shift. Let's talk about the concerning trend, as we have seen that Gen Z, I think the surveys really put quite a lot of concerns when I actually read through it. And also it's good to bring this awarenesses to the fellow practitioner that actually, youngsters are willingly to borrow, money as high as 10%, to invest. So either they are extremely optimistic, or they don't have any sense of danger. So because 10% of interest is actually very high, I think interest can make you or break you see. So I think in view of this, I think that on a national level, we all should guide and really educate our clients about the different types of investments and what are the risks that is involved, you see. And talking about risks, bringing awarenesses is actually very important. Before nasty things will happen, so awarenesses like this about investment risk is very, very, very important. So this is more on the concerning side. Of course, the positive side from the survey, it still shows that majority of the people will still take in advice and from human beings, you see. Because the concerning thing is that, will we be replaced by AI? Is our job is still relevant? I think this is something that we are concerned of, especially for our practitioner, in the finance space. But I think the good news here is that I think most of the people will still take up a human kind of like advice, either from their family, from their friends, from schools, from financial advisor. So this is still a profession in the finance sector. So this is something very, very encouraging. So I would say that to encourage everybody to continue the very good work they have been doing, right, and to press on. Because I think human touch is still the best touch.
Right. All right. Thank you, Jake, for your amazing insights today.
No problem. Thank you for having me here, Nadia.
Thank you so much. That was Jake Lim, an MDRT member of 8 years. This has been the Wealth Tracker with me, Nadiah Koh.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.